We are live.
Back again today for another episode in our series on these generative AI products. And I think we have a pretty interesting topic today. In the previous one, we talked about using these chatbots and figuring out what kind of tool we should be using for every stage, from getting to those problem statements all the way to initial MVP. And today, we're going to be talking about these no-code options. I've been using a lot of Cursor, but I have not looked at any of these cloud-based no-code tools. So I'm really excited because I know you, Shivam, have been playing around with these and building prototypes. We're excited to learn about your experience and to see like how you use these tools and what are the capabilities and how far can we take them.
Yeah, I feel like how far we can take them and what the capabilities are just many. Truly using these tools have been a game changer. My mind is blown in terms of what they can do. It can be used for brainstorming. You can use these tools for prototyping. You can definitely use these tools to upskill pretty much how you think, how you communicate, especially your written communication. There's many articles about how people are using it for emotional support. We won't focus on that, but we can push the boundary quite a bit in terms of how you can use these tools to just better your life, better your profession, and create a bigger impact. And I'm hoping by the end of the next 30 minutes, the outcome is that people are excited about using these tools because that's where it becomes more fun. These tools are not just powerful, I feel very easy to use. The simplicity, the pace at which you can do things, it's amazing. So I'm hoping that just sharing this experience just creates more excitement for the listeners. And you and I are also more excited about the next phase of using these tools. Uh,
Super excited for this, and I love that we're exploring a new format in which we're going to do a show and tell. People can see it in action, can see what you've done. And then we'd love to get opinions and feedback on how other people's experience have been. Maybe they've figured out a way to push these tools even further. I'm excited for what you're about to show us. And I hope that we can get a conversation going and listen to other people's experiences with these tools.
Yeah, let's take a few minutes to talk about the landscape of the AI tools. We have like the popular chatbots like ChatGPT, Claude, and everyone is using that regardless of whether you're in product or not. When you were in India in December, my mother-in-law was asking me about ChatGPT. So I downloaded ChatGPT for her and showed her how you can give it prompts, and she was definitely impressed by the output it was producing. These chatbots are great for like brainstorming, refining writing, and I think enhancing productivity in general. Then you use some of the developer focused tools that are like usually part of the integrated developer environment. I know at my former company, a lot of the devs were using GitHub Copilot, many people using Cursor. And these are really good if you're a technical individual and you need assistance in getting some peer review on the code that you've written or brainstorming on refactoring. And these can like help accelerate the work that you're doing as an engineer. The ones I've been using in the last few weeks are more around prototyping and design tools, where I can just go in, share my idea, enter a few prompts, and it'll actually create a prototype, or sometimes it can create an app as well. There was a great article by Colin Matthews on Lenny's newsletter about typing for product managers, and he does a good job of explaining the different tools out there, the comparison between V0, Replit, Bold, Lovable,
Yeah.
alongside Claude and ChatGPT. I really liked it.
Question. I'd love to know what was that moment when you decided to actually give these tools a try, thinking that they could really enhance the kind of work that you want to do. Like, if I think about the kind of work that we do as product managers, you can often just get a lot done with chatbots. But what made you take that jump into saying, I need to start building things and prototyping things on my own?
Was twofold. One was just seeing other people use it and seeing how easy it is to use. I think that was just like great to see, and I felt I can do it on my own. And second was with the pace at which things are changing in the AI space, I felt reading about it was frustrating for me to a certain extent because I wasn't really getting anything. I knew a lot was happening. I was reading a lot, but my mind was not able to comprehend how exactly do I use it. So I felt I just have to learn by doing, and I've definitely learned a lot in that process.
Awesome. Yeah, that's very relatable for a lot of people.
Yeah. And the third, I was experiencing somewhat of a pain point. Maybe I can use this use case to explore these two. A bit of a backstory. We've been doing a lot of fermentation at home. I've done kombucha in the past, which was not a lot of effort, but at the moment we have multiple things fermenting, which is a fun experience. It teaches you patience because things take time and you have to do repeated tasks over time. But the outcome is definitely very rewarding. And we have like five things happening at the same time. So we had handwritten notes for this ginger bug that we're creating. We need to feed it every day for 5 days. And then for a garlic that we're fermenting, we got to open the lid every day for 3 weeks and then you let it. So each item had its own schedule and a different step altogether. So it was a combination of handwritten notes as well as Alexa reminders that we were using to make sure we don't miss these steps. And I was like, there's a better way to track it. And that's when I thought I can use these AI tools to see what can be created. There's nothing that we've created that's functional, but it was just a good use case for me to test.
And that's really radical. Like that's huge because what you would have done traditionally is you would have gone online and looked for some SaaS tool, some kind of software someone has created. But now your thinking shifted, and instead of searching for a tool, you thought it's pretty easy to just build my own, and I should be able to get this done relatively quickly, and it will be very customized to my own use case. So that's probably a big shift that we're seeing instead of people looking for software, especially for these very niche and small use cases. You'd instead just have people building their own thing.
Yeah, I feel it's a fine balance. I did look for SaaS softwares for this. There aren't any in the market. I believe it could be because recipe trackers, there's plenty out there, but fermentation tracker has to be customized. You can use like a habit tracking app, recipe tracker to do these things, but fermentation, it's a very niche market and the space isn't big enough. I could be wrong, but there isn't anything out there. You have to be mindful of like how you use these tools. So it's great for prototyping or building a lightweight app. The barrier to creating a POC, a prototype, is definitely lower, but you can use this for testing your ideas, get feedback from actual customers, or clearly communicate what you have in mind and what you're trying to create. Let me
Yeah,
share what I have.
so you're gonna share your screen, and we're gonna start seeing what you've built.
Yeah, I'll share two tools that I used for walkthrough. I tried using Lovable, V0 Bolt, and I tried different ones. They have their own pros and cons. Replit was great because it would create a database. However, I hit the limit on that very quickly. So I switched to Lovable, which is what I'll showcase.
Yeah,
But to start, before I started prototyping, I went online and I got different recipes. And I threw that in Perplexity and asked it to create a schedule for me with some format I had in mind. So the first thing I did was garlic fermentation. I said, create a schedule for the following. It should include 0, 1, 2. And I'm giving it some structure. So 0, 1, 2, corresponding days, the task to be done. So it came up with an outline of what the recipe would look like. And then I came back and asked it to create a table instead. So it's a different visual. And then I add a different recipe. So now it has been fed two recipes. It created two different tables. And the next thing I did was I asked it to combine these a singular view, which but I didn't like that because it was very confusing. Like it had a chronological order telling me what to do every day and then different tasks, but it was very confusing. I wanted a customized view for each recipe as opposed to a single table with each recipe as a column. So as you can see, I'm already playing with this in terms of how I want this to look. Like even if I would have stopped here, this would have been better than like just handwritten notes to a large extent. But it finally gave me two different tables following a similar structure. And then I prompted it again to help me create an app design. It gave me a pretty good plan in terms of what features can be in the app, what the app like can look like, the different steps of the user journey, and it also gave me a data model that I could follow, as well as some key features and then future features that could be added. And all of this was in the matter of minutes, where like I'm throwing in ideas from the recipes I found online. It creates a table for me. I asked it to redesign those tables and then give me a plan for the app to be designed.
Interesting. So I started the conversation uh, with a chatbot, and this could have been a chat with any available chatbot.
True.
Yeah, and you mentioned before the podcast that you have the pro subscription for Perplexity, so it made sense for you to use this, and it gets the job done, even though it's not super efficient for tasks which are not internet search related.
Exactly. Yeah. The pro version is one of the reasons I used it because I knew I'll hit my limit with ChatGPT very quickly. The reason the limit is important is because you want it to have some memory and some context. Because in this case, I kept going back and asking for revisions.
So now you have a plan in place. You know what that tracker should functionally do before you thought about feeding this into a no-code tool.
Yep. I'm gonna switch my screen and I'll share a screen for Lovable that I have. All right.
Be prepared for that. One obvious one is why Lovable. I've heard of Replit Bolt V0. I've heard of a lot of.
One benefit of Replit compared to Lovable is that it has its own database. But because I hit my limit with Replit, came to Lovable and continue the process again. So a quick note about the database. It'll even spin it up for you, a cloud database. But Lovable has Supabase where you can create your own database and then connect that to the Lovable app that you're creating. I did start the Supabase table and create it, but I didn't finish that. But that's an option that you can explore as well.
Awesome. So Supabase can be connected to this for a more fleshed out backend and database. This is like Firebase,
Yep.
almost
Yep.
a similar feature
Yeah.
set. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Because right, I can't add things to it. Something. Uh, it won't. I guess it's there right now, but if I'm gonna do a refresh, it'll go away because there's no actual database here. But if I had a database connected via Supabase, then it would persist the changes that I'm making.
Mm.
What I did, like I said, I want to create a fermentation tracker app, create a plan for the implementation, don't write any code yet, and then I pasted the last output I had from Perplexity. This is a pretty good hack Colin Matthews talks about. Don't start writing the code so that way you can review what it's going to build. And this is a place where it's easier for you to make changes as opposed to after it writes the code, which is when you can still make changes, but changing it or making changes earlier is always easier. So I gave it that prompt. It told me like how it's going to approach it. I specified the data model piece. So it went deep into that, telling me how the data model will look like. And this is where I can make edits right away if I want. Uh,
So when I use Cursor, oftentimes it's difficult to stop it from generating code. It will usually take your prompt, especially in the composer. You could type out a message, just a chat, and maybe I don't know the architecture, but oftentimes it will still generate some code. So how does it work here? Where how do you know when it's going to generate some code for you?
so I proactively said don't write code yet. So it's like refining how I would go about building the app with some technical details, some architecture details, but also a phased approach. And then it asks me if it should move forward with implementation. And then I said I only want to create a prototype. So then it goes ahead and makes some suggestions of what can be a good starting point. And I said, let's start with the homepage and detail view. And this is where it like starts to write the code. And one good thing is, even though I'm on like a fifth edit or a fifth version, I can click here and view what the code was. And we can even restore to this version. But every time you restore versions or make changes, it does take a minute or so for it to make that update. So now we are previewing the very first version, and you can see already that the colors at least look different you were seeing before, and then what are you seeing right now?
Awesome. So this was the first output when you asked it to
Yep.
generate some code. How functional was it at this point?
It's pretty good. It created two templates. One of the things I had mentioned was show me a progress bar. So between the start date and expected end date, it is telling me how much time has elapsed. It is telling me the tasks to be done. So I can see the schedule, I can see how much progress we have made, and it's also giving me like some recipe details and some notes to be added. So it's pretty functional, where I can view the progress. I can clearly see what is the task to be done right away, as well as what are the recipe details to be followed. Now, if I go back, I asked it to add a feature. So the second prompt I had was add a reminder feature, which was very valuable because not only is it telling me, hey, you have a task due, the reminder feature is has that warning notification clearly stating you have a task due today.
Fantastic. So it just generated a feature and updated the UI and everything. And I'm sure like you could iterate on this and tell it to even the UI here. Like how granular could you get?
So we can get to that part next, but right now I said add a reminder and it automatically thought on its own that it's going to add this like bell notification and this one task due today on this view itself, which is like a dashboard if this was an actual app. But I can specify some UI elements as well. So far I've specified a feature to be added, which was a daily reminder. Next, I'm actually asking it to add a feature, but also giving it some ideas of like how to go about designing that feature. So I said, add new project. I want you to pre-populate with some ideas but also give me an option to create something from scratch. So this was me asking for a feature, but also specifying that, hey, it should be a drop down of ideas, but don't stop with the drop down. Have an option for you to create things from scratch, which it did. And then the next prompt I had was very specific to the theme and the look and feel. And I said, apply an Instagram theme to the app, which is why you see like those reddish tone colors. And we can preview this version right now. So it's like adding on to it. So first it created an app. I said add reminders. It added reminders. I said give me a Instagram looking feel. It did that. And then if I click on that new project, it did create a drop down where I can select from. I didn't specify like should be. So that's where you can. But I said like also allow me to create things from scratch, which it has that option. Again, no database right now, so any changes I make won't actually change the app, but it gives you an idea of what it can look like if you were to create this app. So this is a really good prototype because not only are you creating like screenshots of like step one, step two, step three, where are the folks in the journey, I can actually create a prototype. You can test how the usage will be to get actual feedback from customers if I was designing this, or even communicate an idea to the teams, which are the two things I mentioned. This is helping us do better.
Interesting. So without connecting to Supabase, what you're saying is the purpose of to get feedback from some end users
Yep,
and communicating an idea to your team members. It's really at this stage about demoing some UX for an idea that you have.
pretty much. Yeah. But I want to call out a couple things which I really liked about the lovable interface. So the first, we walk through the chat where it's like showing the back and forth. I really like this history tab because it just says the edits or the prompts that I'm sending it. So the chat is like the entire conversation where I ask for a prompt, it gives me an output. But this is just like the four prompts I had, or like one prompt followed by three follow ups. We already saw that how it's continuously showing what the preview looks like. I like that it has a desktop view, but it also has a mobile view, which is great.
That's impressive.
Uh, yeah, from a user experience point of view, you want to be able to like look at different devices. I don't read every single line of code, but this is another place you can see how it's structuring the the code and then the different files with every edit. It's even showing me a diff of where it's making the changes.
That's awesome. And I see a button there that says view on GitHub. So it's created a repository, seems like, on GitHub, and you can
Let's
view.
see. I haven't connected my GitHub account, but it looks like yeah, there is a connection to GitHub as well.
Oh,
Okay.
that's awesome. So it's code in a GitHub repo, and oh, that's pretty great. And this is not like sponsored by Lovable or anything. It seems like you can get pretty far along without having to even look at any code.
Yes, and then I want to share one more feature. So one thing that you can do is you can actually, there's a feature called Remix Project where it creates a fork and you can start from that. So if I go back to my dashboard, I should have, let's see, go back, go to dashboard. So I have two projects right now. So I started with this fermentation friend, and then I used a feature called Remix, and then it created a fork, and I made some more changes. This is where we ended the first project, and then I want to evaluate the feasibility of adding two features: upload pictures and community element, people to ask questions and or comments. It talked about the ideas it can have, and I said let's start with a specific functionality, and it kept adding on to it. Let me see if I can do a side by side. Let's come here. Okay, this is the original version where we have the title, the progress bar, you have action, tasks, and recipes. Uh, if I come back to this version, you have the photo session because I specifically said I want a photo upload functionality, but it still has the tasks to be done, the recipe details. So I like that you can create remix project, as Lovable calls it, which creates a fork, and then you can make changes on top of that. So right now I have two active projects, one with the photo functionality, another one without the photo functionality.
How do you see yourself using this fork functionality? Creating a spin-off project? Maybe you want to take it from fermentation to tracking something else, so it would be a completely different project? Or do you think of it more like testing out features, A/B testing stuff? So you want to have both at your disposal whenever you want to have a look at it or show it to people.
I think it can be many uses. Like one is what you said. A/B testing is one example. You could have different prototypes, similar to how people have like Notion templates, for instance. I believe if I were to publish this, it can be a good starting point where, let's say, if I create just a very basic habit tracking app, then people can start with that habit tracking app as a starting point and then customize it to their specific use case.
Awesome. So far, it seems like it's been doing everything up to your expectations. Is there anything that you found a little frustrating or limiting with this?
It's a good question. I feel I was blindsided with all it was able to do. There were a couple times where the build was unsuccessful without it telling me why it was. But I honestly just took a shotgun and I said, whenever the build is unsuccessful, it gives you an option to fix it. I just asked it to fix it. So I'm putting too much trust in it. But this can happen as you are trying to add more features. It is adding complexity. It is adding multiple layers to the features itself. So there are errors. The good thing is they try to fix it on its own if you ask it to do it, but that's a word of caution. I still have to provide context to it. I have to ask it to make modifications to the pain point or use case I have in mind. When it comes to implementation, I also want to pay attention to why it's failing and then what is it doing to fix things.
Yeah. And it just makes me think this is such a different paradigm to prototyping. So traditionally, the software developers would start off with some boilerplate code, and the first thing it would display on a blank screen is probably something like "Hello World," and then you'd slowly start adding elements to it. Whereas here, it just gives you what its view is for the end product that you're trying to build, and then you start adding or subtracting stuff from there. So that starting point is so far ahead from Hello World to a full-fledged UI now.
I ideally want this app to not just help me track things, but give me feedback where I can say upload a picture of it's like how there are many apps where I can take a picture of my plant, give me feedback. Your plant is needs water. So I think that would be like a best case scenario where not only is it tracking things, it's able to give you real time feedback, which is going to be very hard to train. Uh, but the goal here was just to test my ideas, improve my communication, and that's all I have to share. The main thing for me and for listeners, it would be these tools. I can do all of this on my own in a matter of hours. So yeah, the simplicity, the powerfulness of these tools is very impressive. We can go from a half-baked idea, which is what I had. I used Perplexity to brainstorm to define my idea, create a plan of what an app would look like, pasted that into Lovable, And with 5 prompts, it gave me a good looking app that has good features. It has a pretty good like UI. I have a card layout which shows the progress bar. I have a photo upload functionality, tasks, reminders, so on and so forth. So I want to keep trying these tools, even if it's just for fun, but hopefully I can start using them to build real products.
Do you think you would go ahead and try to solve your own problem of not having any fermentation tracker tools that you found useful? So maybe that gives you a more full-fledged functionality to serve your specific um, use case. What do you think would be your approach? Because I know the barrier to entry and the moat for these tools is so low. Like if I'm getting stuck with Lovable, I'll just take the same prompts to another tool and see where I get with that.
I think to building on it, switching the tool is the answer. My sense is like the TAM is not very big. And at the same time, it would be very, very difficult for it to create an app that's more than just a tracker app where it's like smart enough to tell me where you need to make changes, that this is where you went wrong. I did research. There's no apps out there that exist. You can buy templates, which are Google Sheets or printable PDFs on Etsy that people are selling for 10, $15 because tracking is an important piece. I think there's like definitely a use case there to make it smart enough and truly have an agent, like AI mind. That would be great, but I feel like the market size is not that big.
Got it. Yeah. And in the future, we can come back and explore using these same prompts on another one of these tools. And my guess is you'd get some very similar results, although the UI might look considerably different. One
Yeah.
thing I know we had this discussion a couple of days ago, but you mentioned putting the same prompt into the same product again yielded different results, not functionally or results which were totally off or unusable, but both usable options, but they were very different from each other.
Yeah, I feel like they're constantly learning as it has more context, its output will change, which is the whole idea. Yeah.
All right. This was fantastic. There's so much to talk about in this that we could go
Mm.
on endlessly.
Yeah,
But I think this is a good place to stop and think about how far these tools have come and how much use we can already get out of them. And I'm so excited for what we could do with them maybe a year from now.
definitely. Very exciting. And I'll continue with the tradition of over and out.